Moving on to question 6. If an existing social and community use remains vacant, and these are the ones outside of those provided by local service providers that we spoke about earlier, they're required to be marketed before they can be released from social and community use. At the moment, it's 18 months. Does anyone have any comment on the length of time and what that might mean for operations, or whether it should be lengthened or shortened, or any comments generally? Yes.
Hi. It really just relates to what I was saying earlier, really, that a lot of private landlords will keep it marketed, but not necessarily very publicly. And also we won't necessarily know that the actual premises is being marketed anyway, so we can't actually have any brokerage capacity in that. And particularly if they are allowed to keep the rents or the rates high, then it will be very hard to actually meet a community use through that. So it defies the purpose effectively. So I'm not actually concerned about length of time, just about the process of that and who gets involved.
Okay, thanks. So criteria on how it is marketed, and particularly looking at the market value of the rentals of...
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's just important to note that obviously it says if it's an existing policy and it's vacant already, often for larger facilities such as universities or hospitals again, they're not going to have a property sitting there empty for 2 years or a year and a half because it's just appalling property management. For a small facility, fair enough. But I think, if they're already in occupation but they're building a facility down the road or somewhere else, there's no reason why you can't do the marketing exercise when they're still there, as long as that's thorough and robust and, demonstrated that, it's not just been sent out to 5 developers and it's, it has actually been widely marketed. Because I think the problem is if you sort of say, well, it's got to be vacant for 2 years before we'll be convinced that it is actually, not needed, then you end up with these sort of nasty eyesores and empty buildings around, which, sadly, doesn't really benefit anyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think 18 months is far too long, personally. I think 3 or 4 months should be quite adequate. What should happen is that there should be a responsible officer who should have this on his plate, and it's his job to make certain that this particular site is used adequately as soon as possible. And 3 months, I would have thought, should be enough.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think they necessarily should reduce the 18 months. I think on some vacant property it used to be 3 years. But I think I reiterate what other people said. I think, one, if they know they're moving, they can market it beforehand. But the experience I have is they don't actively market, just like with affordable housing. They say social landlords don't want it. They choose the ones to say we don't want it. So, you never see an agent's board up, which they can get permission for. So it's got to be looked at that they have actively marketed it. And if you made it any shorter than 18 months, I think they'd get away with it even more. But there's no reason why they can't market it while they're in the process of building where they're moving to.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Hi, I'd just like to make the point also that not only should, I think, it be written in that it should be marketed for a nominal period of time, maybe 18 months, but also if a landlord can demonstrate that there's been a poor and fragmented tenancy history, then I think that's also quite relevant, rather than just having a blanket approach to vacant properties. If it can be demonstrated that a property is performing badly through short leases and so on, then I think that they should also be considered.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if I'm out of order in mentioning hostels in this context, am I?
Hostels or hospitals?
Hostels.
Hostels? No, go for it.
Because I've had the impression that it's not uncommon for a hostel to run down and the existing provider to want to sell it because they say their particular category, if they're a provider for nursing facilities or something like that, is no longer needed. And it seems to me that we have lost hostels because there isn't sufficient imagination in marketing it for to be continue as a hostel by another provider, and we have I've been concerned that we have lost hostels for that use. For example, if there is a move now towards more student accommodation, for example, and commercial providers now provide good student accommodation and put investment into sort of down at heel hostel accommodation and upgrade it. So I do think that we need to allow more time and perhaps give more advice and insist more that hostel accommodation is well advertised in the right place to find a new provider.
Okay, thank you. Do you want me to come back on that? If you want.
Just to, as an informative really, what we do at the moment is we do protect hostels. It's in the sort of housing policies. It's another of those uses that cross both. It's the ones for vulnerable people are obviously a social and community use, but they're also a type of residential use, if you like. And what we do is we've got a list of hostel providers that operate locally. There's probably, I don't know, about 100 of them on our list, and we sort of check it every 2 or 3 years to make sure they're the right ones and they're still interested. And we will send round a sort of round robin letter, if you like, to all those providers saying that there is this hostel that's currently vacant, and would they be interested, in that premises. So we do carry out that sort of search procedure before we actually grant planning permission for change of use to another form of residential accommodation.
Thank you. Councillor.
It does seem to me, the issue of the 18 months has come up in other workshops. It seems to me, relatively inexpert on this, that in the commercial sector it's much easier to make a judgment, whereas in this social and community area, some means has to be found as to see what's going on, basically, because it will be ridiculous to let things stand empty for too long if it really is there is no need for it. But on the other hand, you can't afford to lose the facility if there would be a use for it, if somehow the right levers were pulled and the right people were involved in it. So I do think that somehow or other a more complex examination of the whole situation needs to be worked through.
And perhaps some better criteria, as was suggested. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I was relieved on hostels to hear your reply on the way you do go through consultations. Could I just make a small plea that you have a quick look at Brabazon House in Morton Street and also at what's happened to its successor building, which is now lying half-finished and deserted?